What's up? What's up? What's up? And welcome to another episode of the Savery Show. It's been a little minute since you guys have been hearing and seeing from us, but glad to have you back with us, rocking with the Savery Show again. This is your boy and co-host Avery Floyd.
What's going on, good people? It's your boy and co-host Sterling Littlejohn.
Yes, sir. So as you see, we have a very, very special guest with us this evening, someone that Sterling knows very well. So without further ado, I'm just gonna give it right to Sterling tonight, y'all. I'm gonna let you have the honors of introducing our guest tonight.
Appreciate it, bro. And just like you pretty much said, this is a special guest. Um, Pretty much, this woman's actually, helped get my career started in, the sport industry. So without her, this wouldn't be possible for me. So without further ado, it's my supervisor, director of outreach and grassroots at USA Track and Field, Robin Beamon.
Good evening, guys, and thank you for having me. I'm actually glad to be here. I'm not Sterling's supervisor, I'm Sterling's team member. Sterling is part of my team at USA Track and Field. Sterling plays a very important role in USA Track and Field, and I'm quite honored to have him consider me to be a mentor and helping him get started in this career. As you both probably know, and Sterling knows for a fact, any career in the sports industry is not an easy career. It's an ever-changing, always evolving career and profession. It requires a lot of time, a lot of patience, and everything is not always as good as it seems. What you see on TV is not what always happens behind the scenes. So I'm happy to be here. I'm ready to answer whatever questions you guys may have for me. My name is Robin Beamon. I'll answer the question before you ask it because it's normally the question that everybody asks me when they first hear my name. Yes, I was at one point married to Bob Beamon, the 1968 Olympic and at the time world record holder in the long jump. We have two daughters, and we remain best friends to this day. Probably my start in this sport was because of him. In the early 80s, when he came to Miami, when we first met, when he came to Miami to work for Dade County Park and Recreation, and kind of got me involved in track and field, something that I knew nothing about. I certainly never ran track, knew nothing about track and field, and challenged me to learn as much as I could about the sport so that I could have a role in the sport. And I actually like it. I like the administrative part of track and field. In fact, I love the administrative part of track and field, and it's opened lots of doors for me. So I'm ready for whatever you guys need to discuss or would like to discuss.
Yeah, go right ahead. You can take it first, bro.
Absolutely. So again, Robin, thank you so much for being on with us. And for those listening or watching, this is the Savery Show Speaker Series episode number 8. So this is the 8th one we got, getting closer to 10. And we're very excited this evening. So Robin, as Sterling and I normally do, I did my research because I know Sterling knows you. I don't know you that well. So I got to make sure I do my research. I come prepared. So with this first question, Robin, we're going to go talk about that sports career, the start of your sports career. And we're talking about the 305 Miami-Dade County. As Sterling, he might not have told you this, Robin, but I'm a big Miami Heat fan. So I got a lot of love and appreciation for South Florida. So with my first question, I did want to just go into the Miami-Dade County Parks and Recreation career that you've had and kind of talking about, your journey through that.
Well, my start in Miami-Dade Park and Recreation was actually I won't say by mistake, it was by default. When I graduated from the University of Miami, I actually went into teaching. My first teaching job was in an inner city middle school, where I was hired to teach a program, a remedial reading program. I had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who literally couldn't read. And part of the program, I don't know, you guys are pretty young, and I don't know if you remember this when you were in school, we had these pre-primer books called See Jane Run, See Dick Run, See Dick Jump. That was the kind of book that we had to use to try to teach these children how to read. It was a pretty disheartening for me, and it was a very, very difficult first year for me to think that children had come that far in their education and could not read, literally could not read, See Jane Run. I finished the year. I don't know that I felt like I made any serious impact, because it is what it is. I mean, they were there in school because they had to be in school. So I decided, I was offered to come back the next year, and I decided that, you know what, this is not really what I want to do. So of course I had to have a job. So I took a job at Dade County Park and Recreation, believe it or not, as a clerk typist too. I could only, we had to type 30 words a minute in order to get the job. And I typed like 32 words a minute because I wasn't a typist. But I found my way through that job. And I worked in what was called the trade section. That was where all the journeymen, the carpenters, the plumbers, the electricians, all worked out of that. And it was obviously all men. And in most cases, all older men who didn't make my life easy by any stretch of the imagination, for obvious reasons. All of a sudden you had this young Black woman that came in there and tried to tell them what they had to do or how to do what they had to do. And I found that to be very disheartening. But you know what? Again, I needed a job. I was very fortunate that I got involved with a supervisor who I guess saw the ability that I had, the potential that I had. And they took me out of that section and they brought me into the administrative part of it. And from there, my career just went forward. I never worked in a park, but I was responsible for several parks and several people. One of the things that I noticed that was missing was a viable sports development program. So I created a sports development program that within 5 years came to be nationally known and nationally recognized as one of the top sports development programs in the nation. In fact, the Parks Department to this day still receives awards based upon the program that I started. Of course, it's evolved over the years, and now we partner with the University of Miami and some other people, but that is the program that we started. And that's how I got started in my career, and I kind of worked my way up from there, just beginning to understand that, you know, in the 80s were tough, and there were a lot of things going on, and we needed outlets for kids. And that was one of the things that we did. We would have track meets in the park on a Saturday and have 500-600 kids. Well, I knew for 5 or 6 hours on a Saturday, they were doing something constructive. They weren't out there, they weren't getting in trouble. And we built our sports development program as a mentoring program. We had after school, homework help, all kinds of things. You had to come in, you had to do your homework in the homework hour, 2 hours, whatever that time period was, and then you went on to your sports. So we did everything. We did t-ball, we did softball, we did track and field, we did basketball. We did every sport that you could think of to try to find a way to keep the kids engaged all year round through the Parks Department. When I grew up, you went to the park and you played in the park. Well, now that doesn't happen unless you have something to bring them to the park. And that was our goal. So I was very, very fortunate to have a staff that had the same mission and the same goals that I did, that was focused on how we kept these kids off the street and in the park and doing something productive. I almost missed them on Sunday because I wondered what they were doing on Sunday afternoons, because I knew what they were doing Monday through Saturday. So that was how I got started in the Parks Department, worked my way up from there. Became one of our recreation specialists, worked on many projects, Super Bowl committees, and all kinds of things, bringing national amateur sporting events into Miami-Dade County. And it was a perfect match because we were recreation. So anything that came in through us. We had programs where we established programs where we took the kids to University of Miami football games, Miami Heat, your favorite team, basketball games, and Dolphin games. We established all those relationships through my years as head of sports development.
Well, that's amazing, Robin, and kudos to you. You've done amazing work, obviously. And I want to, my next question, because you talk about, nationally known programs. So, and we obviously know there's a lot of great athletes that come out of the 305, right? So I want to know, Robin, through your years there in the Parks and Rec department, can you speak to the impact you've had on some of these, athletes that came through, playing basketball, playing these other sports in the Parks and Rec department?
Here's what I want to say about that, because I'm glad you asked me that question, because the relationships are a little bit sometimes disappointing to me. And now let me clarify what I mean by that.
For
We
sure.
obviously have many kids that came through the NFL. Remember that, I don't know if you guys you probably remember because Sterling and I have talked about it. That University of Miami football team under Howard Schnellenberg, those 3 years or 4 years under Schnellenberg, where you had Ray, oh my God, Ray will kill me because I just forgot his last name. All right, Stern, what's Ray's last name? Baltimore Ravens.
Ray Lewis.
Yeah. Melvin Bratton, the Blades brothers. All of those guys came through our program. The disheartening part, and we still have athletes that went to the NFL that came through our program and are playing in the NFL as part of our program. The thing that bothers me is the lack of giving back. We worked very, very hard with all of them as children and made them understand that everything we did was a sacrifice. We didn't always, my staff didn't make a lot of money, but they were there and they always did the things that they needed to do. I think one of the things that we hoped that we instilled in them was that they would pay it forward. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. They seem to get out there and they become successful and they do things that they've forgotten the responsibility of paying it forward. So yes, we have a lot of athletes, mostly NFL players, who have come through our program, still are out there in our program, but don't necessarily pay it forward. And today, in today's society, as difficult as it was for them, it's 10 times more difficult for the kids that are growing up today and having to face all the things that we have going on in our society. And it's unfortunate that we struggle because the funds aren't always there. When we were doing that, it was nothing for, every year there was like 5 of us who we would get a young lady who we knew needed. And we would go and we would, at the end of the track season, go to Walmart and buy underwear or shoes or whatever you need. If a kid needed track shoes, we would buy track shoes en masse. Or I would have a relationship with Nike and get Nike shoes. At one point, there were like 400 pair of Nike shoes stacked up in the room next to my office to make sure that if a child needed some shoes, we had some shoes and Nike gave us those things. That doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't happen anymore because they're just not, they don't have the same mindset. They have different values and different things. So we still do it. Even now, I'm gone. I've been gone since 2015. I still help. I still make sure if a child needs something that we do. We have kids that go to college and, they may need a little bit of extra money or they need something, and I still contribute. I still do that, and I probably always will. So yeah, we had a lot of success come out of our program. The program actually started in 1969 as a small parks department program. I revitalized that track program, and as I said, we became at one time for 4 years, we were the largest youth track program in the nation. We had over 250 kids that were actually part of Miami-Dade Park and Recreation track and field program.
Wow. Well, that's outstanding. And definitely appreciate the perspective, right? We know a lot of athletes or some athletes that give back in the charitable programs and things like that. But your perspective, obviously being there and understanding it, is just insight for us to take away from. Real quick, because I know Sterling and I, we talk about, 2 Black men coming up in the sport industry. And, sometimes, we might not have had guidance or have those who made it try to reach back and try to pull someone up. Instead, it's like, I got here, I got this, I got that, and I'm going to worry about me and, my family, but I'm not really trying to go back and do, X, Y, and Z to help the community I came from. So that's a very interesting perspective I think that we all need to hear from. Well, with that being said, Robin, I'm going to kick it to Sterling now for some other questions.
Thanks, Avery. I appreciate it. Robin, I know you talked about it briefly about your time at the Parks Recreation Department. But for our viewers, can you talk a little bit further about like challenges you faced, particularly being a Black woman in sports and that you dealt with during your time?
Well, one of the challenges that I had to deal with in Miami-Dade Park and Recreation, and it was definitely as an African-American female, I come from a community that is, and I want to make sure that I say this the correct way. It was mostly male Latin men that ran the Miami-Dade County. And one of the things that I consider a blessing is that very early on, once I got started in Miami-Dade County and they started to realize who I was, they accepted me. And that made it a lot easier for me to move forward. Probably a lot easier than it was for African-American men. But I was able to get into that community with people that worked with me and taught me a lot. They didn't know a lot about sports, but they knew a lot about, they taught me a lot about how to survive out there, because that's what it was. I had to learn how to survive. And as I moved forward, as I moved up, it didn't get any easier. It didn't get any easier with track and field, because track and field was a male-dominated sport, and there weren't very many women of any color. Just talk about women. There weren't very many women in these administrative roles within the sport, which is the same thing with any sport. You know, guys, just look. We just got 2 female African-American females in high-level coaching positions in the NFL. It took all these years to make that happen, but you know what? It happened, and it will continue to happen. That's the same thing as you look at in my lifetime. I would never have thought that I would see an African-American president, but I did. And then I realized that there is an entire generation of children who, when they grow up and they say, who's the first president you remember? It's going to be an African-American man, because it was Barack Obama, because that's how old they were when Barack Obama became president. So it's the same thing, guys, in dealing in this industry, in this sport. I continue, and Sterling, you know this firsthand because you're there with me every day. I continue to fight this battle, and I am going to call it a battle. I continue to fight this battle to make my way in this sport, and I think that I've succeeded. Finally, I feel like there is some success based on the relationships that I've had with different people, people within the sport of track and field. It wasn't easy. It was a long journey to the top, and many, many days, guys, when I thought to myself, I don't have to do this. Why am I doing this? And remember, until I came to USA Track and Field, I did this as a volunteer. I spent 35 years putting up with the racism, the sexism, and all those things that came along with this as a volunteer. But I believed in the program, and I was working with it with the youth. And I saw where all the kids that were running looked like me, but everybody that was controlling the sport didn't look like me. And we needed to get in there. We needed to make them understand that these African-American men deserve the same amount of respect, had the same knowledge, and you just can't use our kids and not give us the respect that was due us. And I fought my way, and Avery Stern will tell you I continue to fight my way. I refuse to accept the fact that you don't acknowledge my worth, because I bring a lot to the table. I sacrificed a lot to get to the table, and I bring everybody along with me. I was never selfish. You talked at the beginning about being selfish. Well, Sterling can attest to the fact that I'm not selfish, because at some point it's time for me to go sit down and let other people like you guys do this. And I want to make sure that you're prepared. But don't only be prepared in the knowledge of the sport, be prepared to deal with what goes on in life, because guys, it's not going to be any different for you than it was for me. It was more hard for me because I was a female. And like I said, more than just being an African-American, it was the fact that I was a female. I clawed my way up to where I am today. And I had a lot of people that stood behind me, but I still have a lot of people that won't stand behind me just because I am who I am, just because I don't look like them. I try to maintain a level of respect, and I would advise you guys to do this at all times, no matter what you're faced with. I learned this in Miami-Dade County. Maintain a certain level of respect, carry yourself with dignity, And one of the most important things is do your homework. I learned that from Bob Beamon. Bob Beamon told me a long time ago, if you're going to get in this sport and you're serious about it, you need to become a student of the sport. And I raised my daughters to believe that, you know what? You need to become a student of whatever it is that you want to do in life. I don't care if your ultimate goal is to be a dog catcher. Make sure you do your homework and understand all the things that go in with being a good dog catcher. So, Stern, I think to answer your question, I'm still fighting those battles. I'm still living those struggles, but I'm not going to let it down because I believe that I have to leave this sport in a better place for these children because this may be their only out. This may be the only way little Johnny goes to college or gets out of an environment that's never been a good environment. There are certain benefits to being involved in any amateur sport for these children. And I think that we have to make sure that we arm them with the tools that are needed to succeed. Though I'm okay. I fought my battles. I'm okay with it. I'm at the end of my career, but I need to know that you guys are not going to have to fight the same battles that I fought. And you need to be armed and educated to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just real quick, and like Robin just mentioned, Avery, like, I witness a lot, being next to her. And like she just mentioned, she really does go through battles all the time. And I'll tell you this, like anytime anybody tries to question her about her intelligence about the sport of track and field, she will definitely cut them up very quick because this woman knows everything about the sport of track and field. And, and like I mentioned before, I'm just thankful that I get to witness that, every day. Cause like Robin said, she goes through battles a lot. And a lot of times I'm like, I don't know how she handles it, but she does. And like she said, for us, me and you, meaning you and I, Avery, pretty much, like she mentioned, she went through a lot of battles to make sure that, like us, we don't go through the same thing that she went through. And, that's very important for our listeners who watch this episode is that, a lot of people paved the way for us so we can get into the door of sports management. So, I just want to thank you, Robin, for opening up the door for us to have this platform that we have today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's our duty too to pay it forward as well. Forward.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Can't forget that.
It's not going to get any easier. They're not going, let me tell you something. They're not going to, if you're interested in sports management, you're interested in sports management. As you know, sports management has a lot of nuances. There's all kinds of things that you have to do. But the first thing that you also, like I said, have to remember is they're going to make you pay your dues. They're going to make you pay your dues, and there's going to be plenty of times when you say, you know what? I didn't sign on for this. I say it every day. I promise you. I say it every day. I said it right before getting on the call with you guys. But if you're serious and you're looking to just remember that you want to be successful in your profession. You want to you want to be able to take care of yourself and you want to be able to take care of your family. But guys, I can't say it enough. Remember that there's a whole new generation behind you who you have a responsibility to help them come through it. You're not going to solve it. I'm not naive enough to believe that I'm going to solve any of the horrible things. I'm not going to solve the racism in the sport or in the industry, not just it, because it's not just in track and field. I'm not going to solve the racism in this industry. I'm definitely not going to solve the sexism. I'm not going to solve all of those ills, all those things that are bad. But as I said, I will continue to fight until the day when I finally decide it's time for me to sit down and let you guys take this over. Just remember that 10 years from now, I should be sitting there listening to you say, you know what? I made it through the fire. I came through the battle. They're still fighting me, but you know what? I made a difference. That's my goal, is to make a difference. And as I said, leave this as a better sport for those that are coming behind me, because we have a great sport, but we need to leave it better for those that come behind me. We work in an industry, Avery. We work in an office, in an organization that I promise you, until our current CEO and COO came, our current CEO is Black, Max Siegel. Our current COO It's two things that make me very proud. She's a female and she's an African-American female. And I promise you, I've been working within the national office, even on a volunteer basis, since the 80s. There were very few minorities, and when I say very few, you could count probably on half of one hand, that were involved on that level in the sport. Women were relegated to clerical stuff. Under Max and Renee, we now have Robin Beamon as the director of outreach and whatever else that I'm director of. We have a female chief of finance. We have a female chief of marketing. We have a female chief of director of communications. That did not happen until recently. So that's one of the reasons. One of the questions I saw that you wanted to ask me is what brought me to USA Track and Field after I worked 35 years for Miami-Dade County and retired. That's what brought me to USA Track and Field. We had two leaders who got it right. We had two leaders who knew the wealth that we needed to have women, we needed to have minorities, and we needed to have that diversity. Had it not been for Max Siegel and Renee Washington understanding and putting those in place, there's no way I would have worked 35 years retired and came to work for USA Track and Field to deal with the things that I have to deal with on a daily basis. So that's what I tell you about making huge steps. We've made huge steps in the last 8 or 9 years in USA Track and Field. And I don't know that if they stay there, how long they're going to stay there, and if they stay there, but I think that they've set it in such a way that we can't go backwards. We tend to sometimes, you know this, you tend to sometimes go backwards. I think that they've set the bar so high, we're not going backwards. I'm very, very proud of that. And that is where I am, and that is why I am where I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We definitely dropped some gems. I'm taking notes, man, up here. I'm telling you, I love everything you're saying. So, but thank you. Sterling, keep going, bro. My bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, Robin, you just mentioned what brought you to USA Track and Field national office. But before you came to the national office, can you explain the roles that you had within your association at USATF Florida?
Sure. I spent 12 years as the president and the youth chair of USA Track and Field Florida. I'll share something with you why I even got involved in USA Track and Field Florida. And it goes back to something I told you at the beginning of our conversation. I walked into a situation that I knew nothing about. My first thing was to go to what they called their annual meeting. And it was in Orlando, Florida. And I walked into a room of about 50 or 60 people. And in that room of 50 or 60 people, there might have been less than 10 people who were Black, African American. And I sat in that room. This is the militancy in Robin. I sat in that room and I watched what was going on. And then I remember the gentleman that was president of USA Track and Field Florida and head of the Florida Governor's Council on Sports referred to a man in the room as boy. And it was okay. Nobody got upset but me. And I remember they didn't know me. It was the first time any of them had really ever met me. They didn't even know who I was. But I remember standing up and saying, wait a minute, something in here is not right. And why do you people think you have to accept this? So of course, what they label me as a troublemaker. Well, you know what? I gave them what they wanted because I spent the next 20 years causing trouble. And because I caused all this so-called trouble, I watched the Florida Association start to recognize and respect who we were. You were using our children, but you weren't respecting us. All the kids that you needed to go to national championships and do all these things, they look like Robin, or they look like these other African-American coaches, but you didn't respect that. So I spent 20 years fighting that battle, and I'm proud to say we won that battle. We won that battle. We stood our ground. We empowered people to stand up and take and demand the respect that they were due. And that's what I did. So Stern, to answer your question, my goal in USA Track and Field was never to be the USA Track and Field president, or my goal was to start that trouble and keep that trouble going until we saw some positive changes. And it took 20 years and we saw some positive changes. I was also the national chair for AAU track and field. Same thing. Oh, and you think it was bad in USA Track and Field? Should have been involved in AAU. And I went in with the same goal. My goal was not to any, I didn't want to be recognized for being president. My goal was to make changes in an organization that had been a horrible, horrible place for many, many years. You know, I heard stories from Bob Beamon and other people on the 1968 Olympic team, because remember, until 1976, when they enacted the Ted Stevens Sports Act, AAU was the only people who did amateur sports. Every sport was AAU. The Ted Stevens Amateur Sports Act is how we got the USOC. That's how that was created. And the USOC became the governing body for all amateur sports. And then they branched off to the Athletics Congress. USA Track and Field used to be called the Athletics Congress. We called it TAC, TAC. That's how you got USA Gymnastics. All that USA governing bodies, that came as part of the Ted Stevens Amateur Act. Well, when I went to AAU, I realized that a lot of those old behavior still existed. And they definitely never had a Black track and field chair, but who would ever think that they would have a Black female militant Robin? And I spent 6 years fighting that battle, trying to bring some sort of integrity into that program and make sure that our children were recognized and that resources were put their way. So that's kind of my thing. I don't have a wonderful story to tell you about all my years at USA Track and Field or AAU, because I didn't use them as most people would use them. I used them to make a difference. And I think I did. They gave me a platform. They gave me a platform to let people know what was going on, and they gave me the opportunity to make a difference and try to fix it, and that's how I spent my years. So I spent 12 years as the president and the youth chair. I spent all those years just involved on every level in the sport. I've done 3 youth national championships. I've been the managing director of 4 international track and field championships. And I can't even count on my hand how many developmental meets and things such as that I've been responsible for over the last, I'm almost working on my 40th year as involved with USA Track and Field. 6 years as an employee and the other 32 years as a volunteer. The troublemaking volunteer. And I'm very, by the way, just so you guys know, I am very, very proud of that moniker. I'm very happy to be known as the track and field troublemaker. I'm okay with it.
Oh my goodness.
Well, you came, you saw, you conquered. So you did everything you had to do.
Yeah, she did. And I love what you mentioned about USATF Florida. Because I honestly feel like I hear this from a lot of people that, you know, USATF Florida is one of the best associations in USA Track and Field. And a lot of that has to do, you know, with what you started, and now what Angela Harris, who is the now president, what she has continued to do. So USATF Florida is a great organization, just to let you know, Avery, and what they're doing.
And to let you know something, and so, excuse me, I'm sorry, Sterling, something else, Angela is actually fighting some of the same battles that I fought so that she could be put into the spot that she's in. And they're still continuing to try to make and she's a great president and a great youth chair. If I have to tell you something, I'm very, very proud if I have anything to do with mentoring her, because she's better at it than I was. But unfortunately, because we live in the world that we live in this industry called sports, she's still trying to battle some of the same issues because she's a female African-American woman, head of one of the largest organizations that there are.
Absolutely. And now Robin, we're actually about to transition to like our last segment, which is our miscellaneous section. So one question I wanted to ask you, and you brought this up, mentioning Bob Beamon. I know personally that, you know, you have a lot of relationships with the 1968 Olympians. And if you can you talk about the social injustice those Olympians were going through during that time for our listeners?
I can share with you the things that they've shared with me.
Yeah.
Remember the world in 1968. First thing you have to do is remember where we were with civil rights and all those other things that were happening in the United States. Also take into consideration, as I said, AAU was run, and they took advantage of these young Black men. Again, the athletes look like us, but they weren't in charge of anything. And Bob told me a story one time about things like going over there and they would get their per diem and they would keep part of their per diem. Remember the social injustices done to Jesse Owens, where Jesse Owens wanted to come home. Jesse Owens, I don't know if you guys know this, Jesse Owens lost his gold medals. They took it back. The AAU took back his gold medals. Most people don't know why. You want to know why? He had a family, he had a wife and children who were in the United States, and he needed to go home to take care of his family. They didn't want him to go home. And if he went home, they were going to strip him of his medals. He went home. He did the right thing. He went home and they stripped him of his medals. They have never given him his medals back. One thing I feel sorry about, when I was working with AAU, I was working to reestablish and replace his medals, his gold medal that they took away from him unjustifiably. John Carlos and Bob Beamon and other people on that 68 team and other Olympians before them, 64, all tell me these stories about the racial and social injustices that they incurred just to represent the United States. Don't forget John Carlos and Tommy Smith raising their fists with a black glove on to talk about the racial and social injustices that they were faced with. When these guys came back to the United States, they were vilified, couldn't get jobs, had to struggle to take care of their families. John Carlos's wife committed suicide. There are all kinds of social and racial injustices that these guys put up with, Sterling, so that we can hang those pictures on the wall in the national office today of those other athletes. One day I would like for you guys to probably get them on your podcast here to make you understand this. Again, like I said, paying it forward, but you want to know what I'm proud of all of them for? None of them stopped paying it forward. To this day, they still make a statement. To this day, they still represent and talk about what the right way to do things, even though they face some of the most horrific social and racial injustices that you can ever imagine. But you know what? They never stop. That's why I don't stop, because they are a perfect example of strength and belief and dedication and commitment to a belief. And they don't make a lot, they don't make money. They never made a lot of money, but they never stopped giving.
And I love the fact that you mentioned that they never stopped giving, because I know I was fortunate enough to, have a conversation with Dr. Mel Pender. And, it was very, inspiring just to hear his story and what he went through. And, it's helped, somebody like myself, understand what they went through during that time. Because for us in our generation, we don't really understand what took place before us, unfortunately. And we don't do the research to know what took place. And to be able to have, his knowledge, to share that with me was awesome. And that goes back to what you pretty much said. So.
Exactly, it is.
And I just had one quick question before I take it, give it back over to Avery. This might be a hard one for you to answer, Robin, but I wanted to know from you, which track and field athlete you think has had the most impact on the sport?
Oh, wow.
It's a good one.
Okay, all right, let's bring that down to past, future, what time period do I get to talk about? Because if I got to talk about 68, it's that 68 team. That was the greatest track and field team in the history of the sport. Now, is that what you wanted me to say?
I mean, I really want you to pick one, but I'm gonna let you get away with that
Oh,
one.
well, no, I can't. Okay. You know what? I can't. There is no other track team ever that had the impact totally, collectively, of that 1968 team. They made the greatest impact on this sport ever. Not only because of the protests and stuff like that. Do your homework. That was the greatest track and field team in history collectively with their own events. There's never been another track team like that 1968 team in field events, running events, everything. So it would have to be the 1968 Olympic team. Nobody else,
Okay.
nobody since then.
I respect
All
it.
right.
Yeah,
All
nobody
right.
since then has made that kind of impact. Nobody's made that kind of impact since then.
It's real.
Now,
Yeah.
now if you want to ask me other ones that I think made an impact on the sport itself, and not socially at all, but just on the sport. Come on, I got to watch and have a relationship with Maurice Green and people like that, Maurice Green and Justin Gatlin and Vershawn Jackson and all those recent ones. But again, my answer is 1968 Sterling.
I figured. Yeah, I figured it would be. No, but you are right though. A lot of people say that's the greatest team, ever.
It's
so,
a fact. You can look it up.
Yeah. No, I mean, I saw it, well, for a little bit at our annual meeting. So yeah. You go right ahead and take it away, bro.
Thank you. I know we're short on time, Robin, so we're gonna conclude here with one final question. But I did want to just comment real quick too. The 1968 Olympic team, and even last year in 2020, we saw with the pandemic and the social injustices going on, that it's 52 years past that date, right? And you had made a comment earlier on, what you had went through, and you had mentioned the lady's name, I forget her name, who's currently in Florida, USA Track and Field.
That's Angela Harris.
Angela Harris, yes. And she's still going through battles, like you said. Again, this is years later. So I do respect when you say that, and like you're keeping it real with us, and that's what we love, with our guests, keeping it real, because like you said, Sterling and I, we're both, 27, about to be 28, and then 10 years, 20 years, these things can still be going on. But I love how you said to keep pushing through, keep fighting, even though there will be these obstacles in your way. It's important to keep pushing. But Robin, the last question, and we love doing this because this isn't a question you got emailed, right? So real quick, the Savery Show, right? Y'all see the logo behind me, kind of. It's right there. It's there, right? So the Savery Show came about actually during the pandemic in about June of 2020. Savery, Sterling and Avery put our names together, right? However, as you see behind me with the little bowl with the sports heating up, savory is play on words for the food term savory, right? Something delicious or full of flavor. So my question, Robin, is we would like to know, and you gave us so many gems, I don't know what you might pick here, but we would love to know your one savory moment through all of your years working in sport. You have so many, it seems like, but if you could just pick one moment overall that was the most delicious, tasteful, full flavor moment that's happened in your career, can you please share that with us and our audience?
Wow. Okay, I do know the answer to this question, and again, it's going to lead me right back to 1968. I wasn't there, but in the 50-year reunion of the 1968 Olympic team, we did what was called the Night of Legends at our annual meeting in Columbus, Ohio. I started that. I was instrumental in that. And we had a dinner for the 1968, because almost all everybody that got a medal was there. And we had a dinner, and I walked into a room and I realized, wow, I just walked into a room of history. They were all there. Everybody that got any medal in 1968 was at that dinner. And I don't know how anybody else felt in that room, but I was very, very proud. But mostly I was proud of the fact that I was instrumental in making it happen. That was probably one of my most defining moments in this whole sport, and kind of put a label on why I do what I do, because I saw our future. I saw our past. I saw what could lead to our future, and it just felt good. I can't think of anything else that I've done in this sport that gave me that kind of feeling.
Wow, well, that's remarkable. I'm glad we were able to get that from you too. Like,
That's the first time I've told anybody that, by the way.
there, hey, it's a Savery Show exclusive, y'all. We appreciate that so much. Man, it's been a blast, Robin. You've dropped so many gems for us, our viewers, our listeners. Man, this is some great stuff, y'all. Everyone listening, watching, aspiring to be sport administration professionals, working track and field, or whatever lane in sports. Robin Beamon, the great Robin Beamon, trailblazer, a change agent, whatever word you want to throw in there, mover and shaker, making things happen. We appreciate you so much for being on the Savery Show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you guys. It's been the 8th episode of the Savery Show Speaker Series. Remember, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at the Savery Show. Remember, Savery spelled S-A-V-E-R-Y. Y'all have a good one. We're out.
Thank you.